this very special man. And there he is.
Hi, Frank.
I'm sorry to keep you waiting there.
Oh, no problem at all, mate. No problem at all.
And there he is, Derek Shelmerdine's Rock'n'Roll Unravelled. And this fella, if you want any news or any information about anyone, whether it's a solo singer, whether it's a band, anything, this fella answers it. But his book, Rock'n'Roll Unravelled, is fascinating. I remember when I first met Derek. Now, I did a DVD called Liverpool Unravelled, and I kept saying the interview with him, "Oh, you want to get this Liverpool Unravelled?" And just someone came out and said, "Frank, are you talking about your DVD?" I realised that even Jason, the producer, he sent a message through to me. He said, "It's Liverpool, it's Rock'n'Roll Unravelled," so you do get mixed up. I do all the time, to be honest. But anyway, it's a good evening anyway, Derek, and how's life? How's life?
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that, mate. Oh, it's going pretty well at the moment. We're just sort of in the process of moving house, as it were. So it's all getting a little bit
stressful.
Interesting. Absolutely.
It's one of the most stressful things, moving home. It really is. No matter what part of the world you live in, it's very stressful. But anyway, as long as you're in fine fettle, that's good.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm glad of that. And we're going to talk about two very famous fellows, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. From two very different eras. I mean, Liverpool's own Billy Fury, who is got to be a very major player on the British rock and roll front, and Brian Ferry, who came along really a couple of decades later and was and with Roxy Music. I mean, they made quite an interesting impact in the glam rock scene in the sort of late 70s and 80s.
Can I come in there? And it's interesting to say that, actually, because when Francine was younger as well, and watching, this glam rock sort of thing, I remember our Michael's wife, Anne. She was a big fan of Brian Ferry, and she used to get dressed up in a uniform, like in an American uniform. Not like all the badges or anything. It was just like I don't know, like a beige thing, like a beige shirt, and she wore a skirt, obviously, and that's what Ferry used to dress like this American sort of uniform, and she used to dress in that and go to see him all over the country.
Oh, right.
So he has a massive following to Brian Ferry. I'm sorry there to cut in.
No, absolutely. I mean, he did. He had two separate careers as well, which really ran parallel. I mean, he really came to fame with Roxy Music. But, he was doing solo stuff from virtually the beginning of Roxy Music. I mean, about 18 months after their first single. I mean, he put out his own individual first single. And what was interesting about the very early Roxy Music stuff was mostly Brian Ferry compositions. I think his first album, the one just called Roxy Music, was, I think, all bar one Brian Ferry. It might have been all Brian Ferry. But if you look at Brian Ferry's own album, first album, These Foolish Things, they're all covers, from people like Dylan and all kinds of famous songwriters. Some of the guy's an interesting guy. The Roxy Music was sort of billed as well, not so much billed, but sort of seen as the thinking man's glam rock.
That's right.
He
was totally different. I'm sorry there, Derek. I'm sorry for interrupting, but he was totally different from the likes of, say, Sweet.
Oh, absolutely.
Or any other band that was like this glam rock sort of thing. So he was totally different. But in my opinion, he was cool.
Oh, absolutely.
He was Mr. Cool, wasn't he, really?
Yeah. Well, funny you should say that, because famously, around 1972, they appeared, I think, for the first time on the Old Grey Whistle Test in the June, and Whispering Bob Harris described them as a triumph of style over substance. And I think he went on to say something like, if this is the future of rock and roll, I'm going home.
Go away.
Yeah.
That's not what he said.
Apparently he regretted that, because they went, because that was really while they were just getting going. They hadn't really achieved an awful lot at that particular time. It was before their first hit album came out.
Do you know that song "Love Is the Drug"?
Yep.
Was that about? That's a true saying. That actually, it is a drug. Believe you me, it's a drug. But if that's the time of Jerry Hall, isn't it?
That's right. Famously, their Roxy Music album of '75, Siren, it's her on the front cover. And apparently she was having a bit of a fling with Brian Ferry at the time before she moved on to Mick Jagger. I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but she was very much part of the scene then. So you can see, he's moving in the circles of
I think Jerry always moving in the circles as well, because she's just dumped
models.
Rupert Murdoch. It's great. How you can move about in circles. I just stay static, and that's me. I don't move around in such circles. Fortunately. I'm sorry there, Derek. I just thought I'd throw that in. So go on, carry on, Derek.
Well, do you want to carry on talking about Brian Ferry a bit before we go on to Billy Fury?
Absolutely, yeah, because I want to know, coming to the end of Roxy Music, because they were so popular. And all of a sudden, they just started to dissipate into nothing.
Yeah, I mean, what happened was that Brian Eno, of course, he was part of the original lineup when they were getting together, and it was the perhaps I start a bit earlier. I mean, what happened was that Brian Ferry comes from the sort of northeast. His first band was the Banshees in Sunderland, and then he moved to Newcastle to go to university. And he joined a band called the Gas Board, which always seemed to me to be a very strange name for a band. I mean, he got a degree in fine art, and for the next few years, I mean, he worked in straight jobs. He was a van driver and antiques restorer, and then apparently a ceramics teacher at a Hammersmith girls' school. But he apparently turned the lessons into music lessons somehow. And the school board took a dim view of this, and they fired him. So he decided that he'd put a band together. This is about the sort of latter end of 1970 kind of time. And there was a guy called Graham Simpson, who's the bass player, who he'd played with at college. So he obviously stayed friendly with him and hooked up with him. And Brian Eno was one of the first to come on, and Andy Mackay, who was with him for quite a long time. And they had a few personnel changes. I mean, for a very short time, a guy called David O'List was the guitarist. Now, he's the guitarist from Nice. So, a very interesting guy. But apparently they had a sort of difference of opinion. And you can imagine Nice, much more progressive. So you couldn't see him sticking around in Roxy Music too long. And I might actually have seen them, because when I was sort of delving in a bit, I found in the December of '71, they played a couple of tryout live gigs. And one was at the University of Reading, which was where I went at that time. I was there from '69 to '72. And I
you went to Reading Uni actually ages and ages ago. I remember that.
So I might very well have seen them. In fact, when I look back, I can remember a few gigs, but you can't remember. I went just about everything that was going. If I was there, I was at the gig, because of course the university circuit in the late '60s and early '70s was the big circuit for all the big bands. So it was brilliant. For a couple of quid, you were seeing like all kinds of
Can I just mention a few people who saying good evening to you? Mark Kinnish, evening, Derek.
Hi, Mark. Good to see you, mate.
And the lovely Valley.
Hi. Hi, Valley.
She's all the way from Ohio.
Wow.
In the States.
Brilliant. You're certainly getting far and wide, Frank.
Thank you very much. Thanks. I try to, even over there in New Brighton and up just all the sounds up the road from me as well. That's all right. Just want to say hello to these and a couple of questions, but comments about you. Tony Barton. Evening, Derek.
Hi, Tony.
A couple of thumbs up for you.
Brilliant.
Derek, got a question to ask you. Do you agree? There's comments here and everything. Right. Derek, got a question. Let me go through these, please. Please, Derek. I'm awfully sorry about this.
That's all right.
Derek, got a question to ask you. Do you agree Stevie Winwood's voice has never changed? Still as good as even now.
Absolutely.
He carries on and
the guy's got an awesome voice. He really has.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that, it's like you look at some of those singers from that era, and you look how big Rod Stewart became, and he certainly wasn't, if you like, the best. I mean, he was very good, obviously, but people like Stevie Winwood were very much in the same sort of league.
I'm sorry you asked that question. I just want to go through these.
Oh, sorry.
I just want to go through these people. They just and carry on. Mark always comes out, got nothing to start. Jesus. He comes out with questions which is irrelevant to what we're talking about. Stevie Winwood. Anyway, he says, Mark, Billy Fiore was amazing.
No, absolutely.
Hey, Frank, hope you guys are well, says Keegan Murphy. Now, I don't know whether Keegan's over in Australia. I'm not quite so sure.
Oh, wow.
Because I mentioned him on one of my podcasts, a Liverpool FC podcast, that is. Anyway, I like Billy Fiore's here with a wondrous place. Anyway, even if Frank says the lovely Karen Kariakou.
Hi, Karen.
She's a lovely pair. I know Karen well, and I know her husband, Steve. And the first time she came on, the show, I'm going back a few years ago, and you should have seen me trying to pronounce her name. And I had Algerians with me at the time. And I'm saying, can you pronounce that name? And he was saying, brilliant. But she got on and said, this is how you pronounce it. But I love her anyway. I love Karen. Lovely girl. Lovely husband. Found out Brian Ferry redid the John Lennon song Jealous Guy as a tribute to John. Yes, we know that. And sorry about this. Evening, Derek, says Charlie Wood.
Hi, Charlie.
Evening, gang, says Neil Broderick.
Hi, Neil.
Charlie Wood says Roxy Music was another band Paul Carrick was in. It sounds like the Beatles were the only band he wasn't in. Which is a good one for you. And Derek, I've got Pink Floyd's album, Nice Pair, with Dr. Pang on the cover.
Well, that's pretty collectible.
Yeah. Okay, I'm awfully sorry. I had to go through them, you see.
No, it's brilliant.
So carry on, I'm sorry.
Well, they got their name, apparently, from the Roxy Cinema. Was what they fancy calling themselves. So, the Roxy and then music, because there was another band called Roxy. So they called themselves Roxy Music. But the first real change came in the sort of summer of '73 when Brian Eno left. And I found this quote where Brian Eno says, and I quote, "I left Roxy Music because I had no choice. Brian said, I'm never going on stage with you again." He wanted me to leave. So obviously there was a bit of a falling out, but I couldn't find any sort of details of it. But obviously there was some difference of opinion because Brian Eno is one of these guys that's absolutely highly rated keyboard synthesizer. kind of guy. So you wouldn't really sling him out of the band for. Well, you'd have to have a pretty good reason to sling him out of the band.
Yeah.
He's got a strong personal following as well. He
Derek,
did some great stuff.
Derek, this is what I want. I've been trying to think what I wanted to ask you as soon as you said that we'd do Brian Ferry. Any idea who wrote his music? Did he write it himself, or was it band members?
He wrote an awful lot himself. I read that when he put Roxy Music together, the idea was to play, Brian Ferry's songs, because he was writing songs right from the very beginning, right from the sort of gasboard days. And it's interesting, if you look at the Roxy Music, the early albums particularly, he wrote an awful lot, if not, well, nearly all of the stuff. But if you look at his own albums at the same time, sort of 73, 4-ish, you'll find his own albums, ironically, are all covers, people like Dylan and all kinds of, very well-known songwriters and singer-songwriters. So he sort of almost had two parallel careers going down. I mean, they had a lot of hits. I mean, Brian Ferry had 26 hit singles between 73 and 95, and no number ones, which is interesting. Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. I thought Love Is a Drug was number one.
No, I don't think so.
I just...
Oh, Love Is a Drug. Love Is a Drug. No, that was number 2, actually, interestingly enough. And that was a Roxy Music. That's the thing about Brian Ferry. You're never really sure, like Jealous Guy. That was a number 1.
So it wasn't Roxy Music, Jealous Guy?
It was Roxy Music. Yeah. So, he had a lot of hits. It's difficult to differentiate, really. And most of the musicians he plays with are, they're not Roxy Music. I know the drummer was on the first Brian Ferry album. Can't remember his name offhand. Yeah, but he just seemed to move along, really. I mean, to be honest, there's not really an awful lot of to-ing and fro-ing on the story. I mean, most of, apart from what we just talked about, it's really just the music. He's just been a very successful guy, very talented guy, across a very long period of time.
Yeah. Can I just mention something there? Dennis Paparak, who's supposed to come on after 9 o'clock, he's still over there in America. And he says, "Hi all, sorry Frank, just got out of a meeting. Let me know, Derek." I'm sorry, Dennis. Let me know if you're still coming on. No, Jason will know anyway. So after 9. If not, you've just got to contend with me talking about history and things.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Here's a question for you. What is it? I don't know. It's a comment. And it's from Valley S. I'm curious, Ted. How would you describe the difference between British rock and American rock and roll? Which came first? That's good.
Well, it all started with blues, a gospel, basically. And what happened was that across the early part of the 50s, R&B, country music and blues all sort of fused together into really rockabilly. You could argue was the first rock and roll. That apparently was started by Elvis. It's usually attributed to recording sessions when he was at Sun. The very, very first recording sessions when he was fooling around, and rockabilly, they do the kind of hiccups and all kinds of things.
Doesn't that sound like Elvis then, Jerry? I couldn't believe me ears, when it came.
And they had a couple of guitars and a slap bass. And what happened was that in the UK, skiffle morphed and rock and roll morphed into beat music, and in America, rock and roll just sort of generally died away, and there was a whole host of, several sort of subgenres formed. You had soul music started, Phil Spector, surf music, and what happened was then there was the British invasion in '64 when the Beatles came over, and the British bands then dominated the American charts, and some of the American bands even called themselves English-sounding names, like the Beefeaters. They did become famous when they changed their name to the Byrds in around '65. And then what happened in '65? Beat morphed into rock music. More in the UK with Jimi Hendrix, who'd been beavering away in America for 3 or 4 years, 5 years, getting nowhere. He came, Chas Chandler, the Animals manager, brought him to the UK, formed Jimi Hendrix Experience. And at the same time, I mean, Cream was getting off the ground. So the whole thing was taking a much, much harder edge. And that's when American rock music and British rock music sort of came back together again. In America, on the West Coast, you had bands like The Doors, Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane. East Coast, you had people like...
What about the Beach Boys?
Oh, well, they were surf music. They were sort of ploughing a parallel road, really. They're a bit like the Beatles. I mean, you wouldn't really pigeonhole the Beatles into a particular genre because they just crossed all of them. I mean, they were a beat group. They were a psychedelic group. I mean, Pepper is a psychedelic album. There's no two ways.
They didn't like it. That was the worst. This according to the four lads, the four of them, they just didn't like doing Sgt. Pepper's. He didn't like it. It's the most famous one.
Yeah, I can understand. It took hundreds and hundreds of hours to record.
500 hours.
Yeah.
500.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at those Get Back, that Get Back movie, 8 hours of the recording for Abbey Road. I mean, that seemed long, and that was just 8 hours. So imagine, so for someone like Ringo, particularly, apparently he learned to play chess to stave off the boredom. And I think that's where the whole Paul is dead myth started. They got bored because Rain was the first backwards track they released, so they were experimenting with backwards tapes and things.
Can I just read a few comments because you're very listen. You mentioned a certain name before, and I'd love you to do them in the future. Whenever you like.
Okay.
And that was Phil Spector.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd love you to do a program on him. Would you mind?
No, that can be the next one. I love Phil Spector.
Well, I'll just go through these. Dennis Paparak says, Neil Brother, hang on a minute. Just please, just hang on. Just hang on. I'll just go through these because it's interesting for you as well. Don't forget, you've got all these people listening to you closely. The Ramones got their name from Paul McCartney. Apparently, Paul McCartney, when booking into hotels, used the name Paul Ramone. Okay, well, you know that anyway. Dennis Paparak says, he answers Neil, and he says, all the guys used pseudonyms early on. George went by Carl Harrison, and after Carl Perkins, which, you would say that. Hang on a minute.
And Lennon was Long John.
Yeah, he was. And
that was after they failed. They did that after they failed the Billy Fury. Nice link. Could be a segue almost. When they did the Larry Payne's Palms Billy Fury audition, they failed that, and they went as a sort of consolation prize. They got a Scottish tour with Johnny Gentle, and that was when they started to use these pseudonyms. And apparently they stopped pretty much shortly after that tour because John Lennon didn't particularly want to be known as Long John Beetle.
Yeah.
So they just reverted back. Well, you can't revert back. They, reverted.
Well, Neil Broderick, can I go through this? Because these are all important, for the show, really. And for you. And for me reading them out. Anyway, Neil Broderick says, watching a programme the other day, they're selling £1 million properties in UK. Think it was Channel 4. One of the houses, £8. As a recording studio at the back where Roxy Music recorded. I don't know about that.
Well, a lot of people have studios in their homes, a lot of musicians. I know Roger Waters did, My sort of second wife was a PA to them, and we babysat his house in West London for a week or so. So roaming around the house, and opened one of the doors, and it was his recording studio with all these cassette tapes lying around, and I didn't touch one of them, honest God.
Really, you didn't. No,
no,
you're not.
No,
You're not.
Very tempting.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And what does Oscar Wilde say? I can resist anything except temptation.
Exactly.
And Hendrix was playing blues for years before playing rock music, says Charlie Wood.
He was beaving away. He started playing. He started playing in local bands before he went in the army when he was about 14 years old, and then he went into the army, and he formed a band there. And then he was in all kinds of interesting bands. I mean, he was in the touring band for people like Sam Cooke, Isley Brothers. He actually recorded with the Isley Brothers, and he toured with a lot of, and Little Richard as well. There's an album for Little Richard with Jimi Hendrix, but he was getting nowhere. He even called himself Jimmy something in the Blue Flames, and that was what he was calling himself when Chas Chandler saw him at the Cafe War, and I think it was Brian Jones's girlfriend who suggested to Alan that he should go to the Cafe War to see this guy because he was pretty amazing. And he did that.
You mentioned the Blue Flames there. Didn't Georgie Fame and the Blue Flames, didn't they have a band called the Blue Flames as well?
That's right, yeah. I mean, funny enough, that's another Billy Fiore link because Georgie Fame and the Blue Flames were formed. Larry Parnes decided, because Larry Parnes became Billy Fiore's manager, and he decided about 61 that it was time for Billy Fiore to have his own backing band, because think about 61, beat groups are really starting to form. So, solo artists from the 50s, like, Cliff Richard standing out in the front and Billy Fiore standing out in the front, Marty Wilde, decided that they'd have his own backing group. And Georgie Fame was one of his artists, keyboard guy. So he was, the main man, the keyboard man in the Blue Flames. And then the Tornadoes took over as Billy Fiore's backing band because Larry Parnes thought that the Blue Flames were becoming too jazz orientated. So he sacked them and brought in the Tornadoes, had a hit with Telstar. And Georgie Fame then fronted the Blue Flames. So they call themselves Georgie Fame and the Blue Flames.
Go away. Is that how they came? Oh, that's brilliant. I didn't even know that. I never had a clue about that. That's brilliant. That. You're good, you are.
Jimmy James, I think it was, and the Blue Flames. Jimmy Hendrix.
You're good. Well, yes, there's another question for you. May I ask another question? Now, this is in an American accent. I'm sorry, I can miss an accent. She says, how did electronic synthesizers influence rock and roll, or was it a different genre?
Well, I think they're all sort of subgenres, really. Some purists think that rock and roll was from like 1955 to 51, arguably, to 1959. But the term rock and roll really is a generic term. People talk about a rock and roll lifestyle and stuff. And the synthesizers, I think, the Beach Boys were getting into that early on. But I think what brought them to fame was the German bands like Tangerine Dream, Kraftwerk, and Amen Duel 2. And they really went off down that electronic route. Hawkwind as well were one of the early adopters.
Oh, I think. Really? One of my favourite bands. I told you I went to see them, didn't I? Yeah. With Mott the Hoople.
Oh, they're brilliant.
It was on the same bill, which I didn't know. I never had a clue. But I said to the girl who was with at the time, she was only young, and I said to her, the support bands were great, weren't they? There's only a couple of bands on. And she said, yeah, they were brilliant. Anyway, And years later, the email came through and said I was because I was talking about the stadium where we went to see them. And a fella he said, I was there that night, Frank, myself. And one of the support bands was Queen.
Wow.
And how he knew, he bought a program. I didn't, they were only like A4 paper type, goes together, just these prints. I couldn't buy it. I could have bought one. I don't know.
I know. I wish I bought programs and T-shirts.
Please don't. Please don't go down. I've got a former colleague of mine. He used to lecture in sociology. And anyway, I was talking to him one day. He was a great fellow. We went through university and whatever together. And he said, would you like to come back, and have a cup of tea? And I said, yeah, sure. I went back to his house because he didn't live far from the university that we were working in. Anyway, he went in and he said, can I show you something? I said, yeah, sure. And I went into like a back room. And it's just like your bookcase at the back. Albums of everyone. And I mean everyone. He had first editions of all the Beatles.
Wow.
Well, listen to this. He has all the signatures of the Beatles, right? Except one. And that was Ringo Starr. Oh. And Ringo Starr came over to Liverpool to perform at the famous Empire with his All-Stars, Ringo Starr and his All-Stars, Anyway, he seen him, and he was next to a fella who was actually at school with Ringo. And anyway, as he was passing, Mike said, do me a favour, can you sign this? And there's like this fella who was standing next to him, who apparently turns out to be Ringo Starr's friend at school. He looked at him, looked at Mike, and he said to his mate, he must have thought Mike was with him. He said, what do you want me autograph for, soft lad? And walked on. And he never got his autograph. Never got his autograph.
Wow.
It's one of those things, events that, and yet at the when he came over for the millennium, him and Dave Stewart at St. George's Hall, I'd given a lecture. I'd just given a lecture. I think it was at for the millennium, and they were there rehearsing Ringo Starr. And anyway, I walked over because they were through this room, and I walked over, and Dave Stewart and Starr was talking, and Dave Stewart said, I don't like this place. And I thought he meant the hall at Liverpool. He said, and I thought, oh. And then I wanted to go in and just say, hang on a minute, But anyway, that was it. Mr. Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, Neil Broderick says, is there any truth in the connection with Witness Station at Homeward Bound? Yes, we know that, don't we?
Yeah, Simon Garfunkel.
Yeah. Is that true?
Apparently it's true. I've never seen anybody really heavily deny it. No. And you can imagine, on a wet afternoon. I remember as a boy, we always used to go Christmas shopping in, because I live near Chester, and Christmas you'd always go shopping to Liverpool on the moving staircase and Owen Owens and all that sort of thing. And you always seem to have to change from Shotton High Line at Bidston. And I mean, this is early December. It was always bitterly cold. It was always pouring with rain. And there always seemed to be at least 3/4 an hour to an hour to wait for the next train. So I can imagine a songwriter of the caliber of Paul Simon getting quite inspired by being stuck on a station for some little while.
Well, James Ivers says, just listening in for the second time, loving the conversation. The two of you are so clued up in the music business. Not me, him.
Thank you very much.
Not me, him. He's the one who's clued up. Oh, it was a nice comment to make about
Very
it.
nice. Thank you, Jane.
Frank. But yeah, you're the man. You are the man. And Valley S again, the lovely Valley. She says, in your opinion, what might be the perfect mix of ingredients which creates a rock and roll sensation? How important is the front man? Whoa, what a question that is.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, really. I mean, some bands like the Beatles are far bigger than the sum of the the sum of the parts is far bigger than the individuals. And I think they're almost all front men in a way. But then you look at the Rolling Stones and you look at Mick Jagger, and he really is a focal point on the for the band. So I think bands can work equally well with or without a front man. But I think there are some people like James Brown. Because he performed with the famous Flames, so you could say he was a front man, and he's got the most unbelievable stage act. I mean, at the end, with I think it's "Please, Please, Please," the song, he feigns collapse on the stage. I mean, it's a really dramatic performance, and he used to always close his show with it. And he'd be singing "Please, Please, Please," very slow, very heavy-duty soul song. And one of the roadies would come on with a big cape, and he'd help James Brown up off the floor, put it round his shoulders, and then James Brown would collapse again and go into another chorus of "Please, Please, Please." And when you've got a front man of that kind of ilk, absolutely unbelievable, electrifying performances.
Very similar, I'm not talking about frontman, I'm talking about like a solo artist. And what are they, besides Michael Jackson, because I think he was actually superb, but I always look at, and I thought he was absolutely brilliant, this fella. Well, there's two people actually, and they're so diverse with one another. Can I mention them? Then you can say something. Is that okay?
No problem.
I have to say. One was Chuck Berry.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Live.
Yeah.
Live. And the other fella, so diverse from him, just sat there playing the piano. And you know what? This is true, I had his first album, and it was autographed.
Oh, wow.
It was autographed. And you know what? It was in very, very good condition.
Yeah. Brilliant.
It got destroyed on me.
Oh.
Destroyed. You know who that was?
Fats Domino. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, awesome.
Because you see the diversity of both, from performing the duck dance to just Fats, just sitting there playing the piano.
Yeah.
I love it. I really love this. This is fantastic.
I mean, Fats Domino sold more records. Well, apart from Elvis Presley, he was the biggest selling rock and roller of the 50s in singles, Fats Domino. He was very successful, a whole load of crossover hits when the R&B artists started crossing over in around 54. When the sort of white rock and roll started to take off.
I'm just laughing at this comment here, and it's from the lovely little Lynn Ellis. She says, "Jerry, what do you think of all the funny daft songs that have been out for over the years? That is, I was Kaiser Bill's Batman."
Oh yeah. I mean, I was whistling Jack Smith. I think that was.
Yeah, whistling Jack Smith.
Yeah, I love all that. I mean, I love Ernie, the fastest milkman in the West, Benny Hill. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And, talking Liverpool and humour, I mean, the scaffold, because that Lily the Pink was actually based on a real lady in the sort of 19th century America. they're called pocket-threes, where snake oil, where, you know, she had this elixir that would cure everything. I forget the lady's name now, but it is actually
really
based on that lady. Yeah.
But you know what? It's funny you saying that, because I was asked. I was a judge. I was a judge in street pavement art, right? And who was with me? Who was the fellow judge? Was McCartney, right?
Oh wow.
Mike. So anyway, we get chatting, and I said to him, and here's what I said, and I've wanted to know for years, right? And I said, what was the A3 iron? I said, was it a tree? And he looked at me, and he said, how do you know about a tree? I said, because there was only one tree, iron, and it was an oak tree, and it was one of the oldest. I said, the unfortunate thing was that they knocked it down, or they got rid of it because it was in a road sort of thing. Yeah. I said, was it that? And he said to me, he said, that was brilliant. I said, really? I was made up. He said, but it wasn't that. He said, it wasn't that. So, you know, I still don't know from this.
You'll never know, I guess, Frank.
Isn't that great, though? Derek, I've got a cool album I was listening today, Little Feet Sailing Shoes.
Yeah, it's Loud George.
I thought I wasn't going to mention that, you know. I thought it was a joke.
No, it's Loud George. Loud George, he died quite a while ago now, I think. But he played for Frank Zappa for a while. And when he was leaving Frank Zappa to set up his own band, Little Feet, it was Frank Zappa that suggested, why don't you call it Little Feet? Because you only got little feet. And apparently that's the background. But it's a great album, and he's a great guy. Well worth checking out.
Is Steve Evans, sad week for music last week with the loss of both Rodriguez and Robbie Robertson. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Robbie Robertson, real cornerstone in rock and roll history, really. Because, I mean, he was in Bob Dylan's, he was Bob Dylan's backing group. They were the Hawks. They originally started, they were all Canadian, apart from one of them that was American from Arkansas, I think. I forget which one. And they were the backing group for Ronnie Hawkins, rockabilly star, and made his name in Canada. And what happened was they got involved with Bob Dylan as the Hawks, and they played, you know, the famous or infamous Electric Tour. I think it was in 65, 66, when they were getting booed off the. When Dylan was getting not so much booed off the stage, but getting an awful lot of boos. And then they changed their name to the band. They recorded their first album at the Big Pink. That was where Bob Dylan recorded his basement tapes at a house in Woodstock, I think it is, called the Big Pink. And so the band called their first album Music from the Big Pink. And they made some fabulous solo albums, as well as the stuff they did with Dylan.
Can I just go through these, please? Right. Please. He said he forgot about Lee Bralou, Steve Evans. Steve Evans, I'm sorry, Charlie Wood says Jerry Lee Lewis used to threaten to shoot the band if he hit a dodgy note.
Well, he did actually shoot his, apparently accidentally, but he didn't actually shoot his bass player on one occasion. Whether he played a bum note or not, I don't know. But he did actually almost live up to his name, because his nickname was the Killer.
Anyway, I just want to do this, please, Terry, please let me do it. Neil Broderick, Lemmy, I loved Lemmy.
Oh, I love Lemmy.
I met him at Radio Merseyside years ago, and just chatting to him. Absolutely brilliant fella, what a, and he was, do you know what? You know when you see him on stage in all his leather, it was big cowboy, a leather cowboy hat.
Yeah.
That's how he was dressed.
Yeah.
I said, don't you ever change? He says, yeah, when I go to bed.
He used to play with Hawkwind, didn't he?
Yeah.
And that's how Motorhead came about. They were on tour in America, and they were crossing over the border from USA into Canada, and one of the guards pulled Lemmy over. They took this little bag of white powder out of his case and, took him away. And then they checked it out, and it was only amphetamine. It wasn't heroin. And the Canadians didn't really see amphetamine as a proper drug. So the good news was that he wasn't in trouble with the authorities. The bad news was Hawkwind sacked him anyway. And he went off and formed Motorhead.
Okay, can I carry on now with these?
Sorry.
No, I think it's great. I just love it. But anyway, Zappa's mum said he had little feet, Derek.
Oh, fair enough.
That was you talked about before, right? I used to love the novelty record, says Charlie Woods. The Ying Tong song. Remember Tommy Cooper? Don't jump off the roof.
You'll make a hole in the ground. I mean, the Goons, I mean, they were very much important.
Frank, what's searching for Sugarman? Documentary about Rodriguez, amazing. Will do, Stephen, will do. And Neil Broderick, the Eagles were manufactured in England, strangely enough. And Valley S says, I remember the group Mountain.
Yeah.
Leslie West seemed to prove that pure talent outshines good looks. Your
Absolutely.
Thoughts,
I mean, Kentucky Sleigh Ride, they've got a live album. I can't remember the album's called. And there's about a 25 minute version of Nantucket Sleigh Ride. I mean, that was used for one of the British sports programs. Might have been Match of the Day. It was something like that, the theme. But Leslie West, I mean, what a great guy. And Pappalardi, Felix Pappalardi, the bass player with Mountain, he went on to be Cream's producer. He produced all Cream's stuff. But sadly, his demise was his wife shot him. He obviously upset her, and she shot him dead.
God, you must have been talking to Jerry Lee.
Corky Lang, I think. Yeah, Corky Lang, I think, was must have been the drummer.
That's incredible, though.
Yeah, but they were a fabulous band, Mountain. Really.
Let's see it. Let's see it. See, you're not letting me. Right. Just before, I've got to do some history, you see. And just before I go to the history, don't forget Phil Spector, please.
Oh, no, we'll do that next show, Frank. I love Phil Spector. There's so much to talk about. Really is. Fantastic. Interesting guy.
Fantastic. Can I just go through these before we show the history? I think the people would like the history tonight. Right. See, hang on. Oh, God, blimey, he's talking to one another. Redbird Dina, listening to you guys has cheered me up. Great convo.
Oh, thank you very much.
Don't forget, Redbird, tomorrow evening between 8 and 10 is the Liverpool FC podcast.
Yeah.
Don't forget it tomorrow. Thank you so much. Some people say the Beatles and the Byrds had similar sounds. Don't do that, yes. Don't do that yet. That'll be good, the Phil Spector and Motown music 1 week. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, they're both great stories.
What's this? Why kick a moo cow? Liverpool bands. Why Neil Broderick? I've never heard of them. And John Smith says, evening all. And Steve Evans says, Frank, a couple of young local bands to recommend if I can. The Cheap Thrills, Casino Brighttown, The Stamp. You know what for you, Steve, because you know you like Derek, you know so many modern day bands and whatever. and just come on sometime. Fed up asking you. I really am. But he's good. He'd be great with you, you know, the two of you sitting face to face. He really would be good. You should get on like that.
Yeah, brilliant.
House on fire. Right? Just let me just through this. I'm sorry. You should talk about 10cc. 10cc next week, Derek. They contributed massive. Oh, they contributed to the Brit music and all videos they made. They were brilliant.
They were a good band, yeah.
And good evening, Frank and Derek, says Philip Jones. I will see you Friday in town from Philip Jones. Thank you, Philip. The birds took their sound from the searches, says Charlie Wood. No, that's a thing. Derek, once again, been brilliant.
I really enjoyed it, Frank. Really enjoyed it, mate.
These are thoroughly. Even from down there in Australia, g'day. From there to over there in America.
Brilliant. That's excellent. Excellent, mate.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And they are, look, the lovely Valley says. Thank you, Derek. You are amazing.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks. It's been great talking to everybody.
Oh, we added another one. Well, Lynn Ellis, come back soon, Derek.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I see.
Thanks.
So, what you've got, see, you come across, to be honest, it's like anything. If you know your profession, you've got no trepidation, to be honest, to what you're going to talk about, because people ask you questions. You mentioned people there I'd never even heard of. Never even heard of. Absolutely none whatsoever. But anyway, you know your stuff, and this is why I love you having on. Yeah, I love you coming on, and I'll see you in a week or two. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
Thank you so much, Derek.
Oh, my pleasure, mate. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.
Excellent stuff. And try and watch the the replay on YouTube.
Right.
It is good. Can I just go to this? Right, two. Stairway to Heaven, the greatest lyrics of all time, says Neil Broderick. John Smith, rock and roll was even the catalyst for British dance and acid house. Ironically, the machine that was used in early house records was intended as a bass guitar accompaniment for guitarists. That's all gobbledygook to me, but it won't be gobbledygook to me, would it? I haven't a clue, but unfortunately, you can't answer that. But don't forget Phil Spector next time.
Without a doubt. No problem at all.
And I'll see you in a week or two, because all these clips are waiting. Okay, thank you so much, Derek.
See you later, mate. Cheers.
Ci vediamo. Ciao.